Hello everyone and welcome to another Sims 2 speed build. It's been a little bit of a hot minute since I posted my last speed build, and that's because I was away on a work trip for a couple of days last week, and then pretty much since the weekend I've been a bit ill, so I've only really mustered up the energy to post a speed build and do a voiceover today, so I'm getting it out of the way. Now this is one community lot. The last couple of Sims 2 speed builds that I've done have been a couple of community lots in one video, but this is just the one community lot today, and that's because it ended up being quite long, like deceptively. I mean, it's the Flowers and More community lot in Bluewater Village, and I don't know, I just kind of went all out on it. I mean, you can't. It's a flower shop. What can I say? It really doesn't need to be as complicated and kind of elaborate as I made it, but I did. So we're just gonna roll with it. It is owned by Florence Delarosa. Hopefully, I can get through all of the speed build making sense. But it is owned by Florence Delarosa, and she is not currently part of my streamed families or families that I plan on streaming, but I do quite like her, and so I may include her into the streamed rounds. Just kind of, yeah, making up my mind on that, depending on, time and all that. I kind of do want to get through my rounds on stream, in I guess, a timely manner, and we may see her in a stream every so often if I don't manage to play her in my free time or off camera or anything like that. So yes. So as you can see here, it is going to be two shops. Well, not two shops, but the flower shop is going to be in its original place, and then next door is going to be a cafe, which I have given an unofficial name of the Grandma Cafe. And that's just because I wanted it to look like a cafe that was quite dated and, kind of might be a hit with the grannies in town. The original kind of style that I went for, this is another thing with this build as well. So I built it, and then after building it, I kind of had some reservations about some choices that I made. So I ended up kind of renovating a lot that I had renovated. So there's kind of like a double renovation going on here. Anyway, the style that I was going for was actually quite bright, and I tried to incorporate a lot of furniture that kind of fit, I guess, like a granny theme. And in the end, it kind of just didn't really work. Some aspects of it I liked, but then others I didn't. So I did come in and change it. So anyway, looking at what I'm doing now, so I'm working on some shop front windows. I couldn't quite find any windows that I liked in my catalog, so I went and downloaded I think it's called the Victorian shop front set, and I think it's on the Sims resource. So I came in and brought these windows into the build, and while they look really good, I just felt like they were a little too. They didn't really suit the kind of theme that I'm going for with Bluewater Village, which is like that New England kind of theme rather than a like a Victorian pub. So you can see me kind of place down a lot of the assets here, but in the end, I end up replacing them. So I mean, this is just to show you how it looks. And I mean, it does look good. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I don't absolutely hate what I'm seeing here, but it just didn't really tie in with the theme that I was going for overall. So yeah, yeah, we can see me put all this detail on the shop front, and then I kind of, yeah, switch it up quite a bit. Well, at least the windows change. This, I guess, it's almost like an awning above the shop front, stays the same throughout the build. But yeah, the windows and all that kind of change quite drastically to look more like windows that belong on a build in the style that, this kind of New England style that I'm going for. So yeah, you can see I'm gutting the interior, and yeah, pretty much the flower shop, the size of the flower shop more or less stays the same. The floor plan doesn't really change at all, and the cafe is just, yeah, that's pretty much just one big room there. Of course, the upper levels are unfurnished because I don't have any sort of desire to play in them. They're purely there to be decorative, as with a few of my other builds. I don't really have any plans to do anything with the upper levels. Maybe if, Florence decides to make it a little apartment above, then I could consider doing that if she ends up spending a lot more time here and it's more convenient for her to stay overnight, then perhaps I might put a little apartment above. But as it is now, the upper floors here have no function. So I've switched out the windows, and I started using these windows from the Sims 3 to 2 Spa conversion set, and I actually really like these, but they only have one color to them. So I had to go and make my own recolor of these windows, which was surprisingly pretty simple. I'd never actually know I had made one recolor before. So no, yes, at this point I remembered how kind of easy it was to make a recolor of something. So I actually just saw my desktop there. So I went and quickly did that, went and recolored these windows. The only issue with them is that they were really, really shiny. And it's not until I start doing the kind of the second renovation that I take the shine off the windows. And then with taking the shine off, they don't quite match these kind of decorative pieces, wall pieces, and pieces around the awning that came with the Victorian storefront set. So I had to do a little more rearranging with the windows and the detailing around the front of the shop. Now, moving on to the interior, and I tried my best to kind of use the color schemes that were already in here. So this kind of mahogany red wood. And you can see, like, I end up leaving all this footage in. Like, I could have easily just cut it out and not even talked about it because the color scheme completely changes. And that's because the mahogany in The Sims 2 is just so intensely red, and it's really hard to have another wood tone kind of go with it, and just the red just stands out too much. And so I tried to furnish everything and have all the textures in this mahogany red, but honestly the room just looked like a bloodbath. Pretty much the red wood is just so intense. So in the end, I just kind of just started recoloring everything to a much more kind of neutral, not neutral, but a deeper wood tone that is less red. But yeah, so you can see just the journey that I'm taking with this color scheme. I tried my best to make this red work because I have a lot of, objects and walls with this mahogany red tone in them. And I feel like it's a bit of a waste sometimes to not use those assets, but yeah, it just wasn't working this time at all. So I had to give them a skip. So the section on the right here is where the cafe is going. And I kind of just got the wall texture up in there and then just moved straight back into the flower shop. I guess I was just needing a break from that red. I was like, oh my gosh, this is way too much. I'm going to go to the cafe. But then I, persevered and came back to the flower shop to just see if there was any way I could salvage this red tone here. But nope. I'm just trying my best to kind of, fill it out as much as possible, trying to squeeze in another wood tone, but it just looked way out of place. Now, in terms of the purpose of the flower shop, I do like to have all of my community lots kind of make sense and be useful. So I'm thinking that the purpose of the flower shop could be for, buying gifts for someone. It's maybe for nature sims. Nature is their one true hobby. Then someone could come here and buy them a gift of flowers, or even dates. Something cute like that. Now, my idea for community lots in Pleasantview is that eventually I want all of the community lots to be owned by or be owned businesses, and that's when I will renovate them. It's been a little bit of a different story for Strangetown. I think that's just because when I started that neighborhood, I was in a different mindset in terms of how I actually wanted to run the neighborhood per se. But with Pleasantview, because I kind of came into this neighborhood starting it fresh, and then being like, when I thought about renovating the community lots, I thought, actually I would prefer to play play it this time around, where I will renovate the lots where they are owned by someone, and someone spends their own money on these upgrades rather than the money kind of coming from thin air. Even though, like, most of the time the Sims can't afford the renovation, so they end up taking out massive loans to fund them. Uh, it is kind of a more, I guess, a fun way to play with a more integrated neighborhood. So yeah, just chiming in about the build here. So you can see that I've completely switched out the wood tones here and gone with something a little more neutral and warm. So back to community lots and how I want to play them in Pleasantview. It's actually been really fun to play more or less an integrated neighborhood, and I think that's just come from me and my build a city kind of project that I'm doing in The Sims 3. I found it much more engaging this time around to actually have the Sims be responsible for the community lots, and how well they are, how well they run, and the types of amenities that they offer. And I want the community lots to have a real purpose to them, rather than just kind of being like a random place for Sims to go. Like there actually needs to be a purpose for them to go there. And yeah, so that's kind of my goal with Pleasantview. Strange Town, yeah, it's going to be a bit of a, I don't know, like there's just going to be so many community lots, where I don't know how, if I do plan on integrating that neighborhood. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do it. I will probably start integrating some townies into my rotation and have them run some of the community lots as well as the pre-made families, but those are just kind of musings at the moment. They're not really anything that I plan on doing in the immediate future. So yeah, actually, yeah, when I was placing the objects here, I realized, oh well, Florence owns this shop, so she can actually get the items for sale on, the wholesale discount. So I had to turn that on, and it's not the most pretty thing to look at because all the items are yellow, and you kind of don't really get a perspective as to how they look in the shop until I get out of wholesale mode. So yeah, you just have to bear with this while I place all the objects in wholesale mode. But you will get a better view in the screenshots, and I guess as I'm moving around the build, working on other things. But yeah, there's lots of plants from the catalog, as well as some shelves for crafted plants, and flower arrangements and all that. But Florence didn't have many at her disposal. So she didn't have many at her disposal. So these two kind of middle shelves in the center of the shop are where the crafted flowers are going to go. But yeah, I don't manage to fill them out. So yeah, they're a bit empty at the moment. And I'm moving back to the exterior, just changed the color of the siding to be a little less saturated. You may have noticed at the very beginning of the build that I went with the super saturated wood siding that came with, I think they came with Mansion and Garden, because they go with the Second Empire build set. So I tried those, but they were way too saturated. And then so I went a kind of something a little less saturated. And even then I was like, nah, it looks, a bit too much for my liking. And so I desaturated or used a less saturated tone in the end. Now I'm just kind of adding some clutter around the flower shop. So we've got this nice like wheelbarrow of flowers there, which I thought was really cute. So just chucking that on the sideboard there, adding some hanging plants. And yeah, it's actually a really cool little flower shop. And you can see all the work that I'm doing now. You can see kind of, I had to go all out on what's literally just a flower shop. But yes, it's full of plants and all that stuff. Now, it's not going to be as cluttered as the pet store. That was kind of, I guess, its own thing. But there is a good amount of clutter here and there. I think with the Ramirez Fine Furniture, that store, I'm going to make that a bit more cluttered, like the pet store. I'm thinking about making that furniture shop into like an antiques furniture shop. Rather than just kind of everyday random bits of furniture. I think it would be quite nice to have it more as, like an antique shop. So a lot of dated furniture and knickknacks and all that stuff. So I've pretty much finished with the flower shop, and now I'm moving on to the Grandma Cafe. And so it's basically there's an espresso bar, and there's a couple of vending machines for food. But I just wanted this to look kind of a bit dated, so that, well, in the end it ends up looking a bit kind of dated and, got some elements of, I don't even know what this grandma aesthetic is, but to me, it just reminds me of grandma. This initial aesthetic that I was going for was, it was very much just thrown together, and I can't even describe what it is really, but I think where I was going was I wanted there to be lots of color, lots of floral patterns, some kind of dated furniture, and rugs and drapes, and these particular tables here, these quaint tables, they just come in this kind of, these wood tones that are just, kind of country, but just something that I would think that I think I would see in like a grandma's house. There's floral patterns on things. And so I was just thinking, I think it was a combination of me just wanting to use these assets and actually make use of them. So I was like, I'm just going to chuck them in a cafe and call it a grandma cafe. But in the end, it just didn't quite come together the way I wanted it to. I mean, it's fine. Honestly, it's not terrible, the end result. But I feel like I'm much more happy with the subsequent renovation that I came in and did. But yes, this abomination is purely here for your enjoyment. Maybe you might get some ideas from it. I certainly am not, having looked at it again. But yes, I mean, it's all the process of putting a build together. I've left a lot more footage in this particular speed build than I normally would. I thought about cutting a lot of this stuff out, but then I thought it would be quite jarring if, you saw me start working on the cafe when I was doing my subsequent renovation and it's all furnished. But you can, in terms of the placement of objects and stuff, I guess you can kind of see the thought process as it's coming together. Well, not really the thought process, but see the process as it's coming together. But you can see I initially made the cafe area take up the entire back space of the room, but that ended up just looking way too big. and like a ridiculously big kitchen for a cafe of this size just made no sense at all. So I scaled the kitchen all the way back. And I guess, yeah, continuing with the granny theme here. So you've got some like these, I can't remember what the curtain coverings are called, but they're from the base game. I might have used some recolors on them, but I've also plopped a few floral pictures around. And there's also some lilies and some vases on the tables. And yeah, this is actually where I've significantly reduced the size of the kitchen in the cafe, and I've just brought the booth seating all the way around. But you can see that the number of tables or the spacing between the tables wasn't quite matching up. So I've got this little bar area in front of the window on one side of the cafe. Now, in a moment, you are going to see a little bit of duplication in terms of me, placing objects and stuff. And that's because I actually had a game crash. And when I came back and started rebuilding everything, I didn't exactly do it in order. So yeah, I started the footage after the crash from the point where I moved the island counters to be on both on the behind both windows. So yeah, just adding in some hanging plants and some essential light switches to add that extra detail. And now with some lights for the cafe. I don't know why, but I had a bit of trouble deciding what lights to put in here. I chose these 3-2 lights from the old mill set initially, but they looked a little too kind of rustic for the vibe I was going for, whatever vibe it was with this initial kind of build that I put together with the cafe. But yeah, I just decided against them in the end. So now I'm moving on to the bathroom and the staff room. Now, the staff room is it's very basic. It's not my finest piece of staff room work, but I was mindful of the amount of money that I was churning through, just keeping in mind that this is an owned lot, so Florence does have to pay for this stuff out of her budget. So we can say quite confidently that Florence did not have the budget for a decent amount of staff amenities, but really it's just the clutter. So yeah, it's not like the staff are really missing out on much. So with the garden here, I kept most of it the same. I did have to trim it back quite a bit to make room for the cafe, but I did want to keep this cute little garden intact. I just kind of re-fenced it, and yeah, pretty much left it the same. Now I'm working on the parking lot, and this is going to be another kind of integrated parking lot with a lot next door, and it's the furniture shop next door. So this parking lot will integrate with that. So I'm just kind of constructing it accordingly, adding in the usual cars, deco cars, and then behind the parking lot is just it's the a continuation of the I guess nature walk behind the that connects to the pet store. So just making sure that all looks nicely tied in and connected. Adding in the appropriate terrain paint and some trees and some shrubs here at the front, and the street lamps that I've been using for Bluewater Village, and then some outdoor seating as well, just to kind of tie it all together and make the front look more interesting and alive. And then putting in some trees and some shrubs out the back there. And we're getting very close. Oh, actually, no, I'm putting in some blinds on the kind of the empty upper levels so that they don't look, so they look somewhat occupied. They don't look like just big empty rooms. I feel like adding the blinds to the windows just makes them look like the space is used. or that there's something up there when you know you're looking at the building from the exterior. And here just adding a little more detail to the front of the shop. So we've got a few plants and a chair. And now I'm just adding a few more extra details to the rear of the building. We've got some boxes, a little bit of trash and all that stuff. So this is the part of the video where I do a subsequent renovation, or I guess just revisiting the original renovation that I did. So initially I had the shop and the cafe in what appeared to be kind of one building, but I wanted it to look a little more interesting, and I haven't quite done this yet in Bluewater Village or Pleasantview, but I do like to do it. I like to have some community lots look as though they are kind of two buildings on one that are joined together. And this is kind of a theme in I guess North American cities. I mean, I guess any sort of town center really, you'll see kind of row shops, and so I kind of wanted to bring in a little bit of those vibes into this build here. You can see I tried to place a chimney or a fireplace, but because I had freeze levels on this building, it wasn't quite working, so I had to take that out. Now, I wanted the windows on the second shop to be different from the windows on the flower shop. Well, the windows on the cafe, I wanted those to be different from the windows on the flower shop, but I couldn't quite find anything that I liked. The good thing about the windows that I used on the flower shop and the cafe is that I can have the island counters face the window, and it just wouldn't look stupid with there being a window there, because the bottom part of the window is covered, so it looks fine with a an island counter there. I changed out the door though, so the front door is different, and again I had to go back and well, not go back, but I had to go to back to some PE to recolor the windows so that they matched the door that I'm using here. So I also struggled a bit with the upper level windows, just because of the spacing. I wanted there to be 4 windows on the upper level, so I had to kind of find a single window that took up 2 tiles, and I initially went with these, I think they're base game windows. They are base game windows, but I think they're a custom version where they are it's 1 window on 2 tiles. I think the original base game window is only on 1 tile, and then the 2 tile version has shutters. But even these windows didn't look very nice. Well, they looked nice, but not really the style that I was going for. So I do end up changing those a little more down the track. The other thing that I am doing here is the cornice, and I had so much trouble with the cornice. I could not get the cornice to look the way I wanted it to, because this is only a 2-story building. I didn't want the cornice to be massive. I wanted like a cute little cornice just to complement the building, and it's a nice touch up the top there, but yeah, I couldn't find one that I liked or that went with any of the wood tones that I was using on the exterior. Now the cornice you can see that I'm using here now looks fine, but it sticks out too much at the top. And yeah, and that one actually comes with the 3-to-2 spa rabbit hole set. But it just stuck out a bit too much, and so in the end I went with the kind of the cornice that I usually use, and I added a freeze level above it to make it look a little more built into the building rather than just floating on top of it. And that meant I had to adjust the building next door to accommodate the freeze level that I placed on top of the cafe. So here I'm doing that now, and then just adding in the cornice and some trim around the edge of the building too. But yeah, in the end, this I feel looks much more interesting than the previous build that was just pretty much just one building, one really long building. And yeah, I guess it made more sense for 2 different businesses to, while they can at times occupy the ground floor of one big building. I just feel like this looks more interesting, having the businesses at the bottom on the ground levels occupy two different buildings, but more or less be connected. And yeah, so this is we're coming up to the final look of the rear. Having to add the freeze level above the cafe meant that there's now a big space between the windows of the first floor and the well, not the first floor, the second floor and the third floor. But I'm just kind of putting up with that. Like, it's not the worst thing in the world. It looks a little bit funny, but I mean, I'm happy with how it is in the end. Like, I wasn't prepared to kind of go to any great length to make that look any better. So now I've returned to the interior of the cafe, and now that I'm looking over this, I think a big reason for me wanting to completely overhaul the cafe was because of the wood tones that I use for the exterior of the windows. The wood tones on the windows are very dark, so I wanted to change up the entire cafe. Still have it, have like a granny kind of floral theme to it, but just tie in more with the windows and with have the wood tones kind of complement each other a bit better, and the colors to be a little less over the top and mismatched. So yes, this is pretty much a me basically doing a bunch of recoloring. So I kept a lot of the furniture the same. The main thing that I switch out in terms of furniture are the counters up the front here, or the island counters, the tables and the chairs. I was having a bit of trouble. These island counters that I use have like a column on the edge of them, and sometimes the column doesn't place, it doesn't sit in the right place. So I had to put the middle island counters on OMSP so that the column wouldn't just randomly appear on the edge of one of the counters. And so I've taken out the rug. The rug was just a little too busy, looked a little crazy, but I feel like the tiles look really good. Well, they don't look good with the furniture that's in there now, but I mean, it all ends up being recolored. So you can see I'm putting in some different chairs and switching out in a minute I will be switching out the tables and recoloring the booth as well. So yeah, here I'm just playing around with some wood tones for the booth, and I think I was going to go for black initially, but then I was like, no, that's a little too goth. So I kept the red, but even then I changed that. I'm pretty sure I do at least anyway. But I put in some new tables, and these tables they're like white, and they have a nice kind of fringe on the edge of them, which I thought was kind of granny chic. So yeah. And going back to the cafe, I tried a different half wall, but I think the original half wall looked better. And yeah, I was kind of thinking about changing the wood tone of the counters here, but I just preferred the original in the end. So you can see I'm trying a different wood tone, but I wasn't quite happy with just how it looked. It wasn't really the style that I wanted. So I was okay with this wood tone for the counters in the end. Changing up the fence, because obviously I don't want customers going behind the espresso bar, which they will. So I have to put a fence there to stop that from happening. Now I tried these kind of stone countertops, but there was a bit of a seam between the counters. There wasn't like really a smooth transition between them. So I just went back to the original white that I had, which is a bit of a shame because the stone counters would have looked quite nice. But yeah, they had a seam in them, so didn't use those in the end. Now I'm just adding a little bit more detail to the front of the cafe. So just a coffee shop sign. And what am I doing now? Oh, I think I'm just taking a look at my work. just admiring all the work I put into this. Really, I'm just seeing how it looks and whether I can do anything different. So I've come back to the rear of the building and moved a few things around, added in another uh, electrical box or utility box, given that this is now considered a separate building. Changing up the windows as well. I can't believe I left them in that car in that shade of red for so long. Oh, I do change the booth color. Yes, so I changed them to like a tan color. Yeah, and I mean the color that I had was fine, but I feel like this just looks a little better. And putting in some wall lights here, just rearranging some of the paintings and recoloring the windows on the interior. I think I already did that, but then I deleted all the windows and placed them down again to be in the right color. And then I realized on the interior that they were the wrong color, so I had to recolor them again. And then just, yeah, what do you call it, texturing the ceiling or the roof of the cafe. There was actually a bit of a lull there with the footage, so I must have just gone off to do something. But I've cut away to me putting in some clutter in the cafe, so it's not a huge amount of clutter. You can see in the bottom left-hand corner that Florence was running out of money, so I couldn't really go all out with the clutter, but I put in a decent amount of clutter. Of course, she still has to pay her staff which work here. She's got a couple of staff members. So yeah, I couldn't really go crazy with the clutter. But I've got a nice cake stand here, and I'm putting in just some jars of stuff at the back. And now I'm adding in a little bit of coffee shop clutter there. So some stirrers, and I think those are sugar packets in that container. So now we're looking at some screenshots. And here is a before of the interior and an after shot. And here is another angle, and then we are going to look at the after from another angle. Here is the cafe. Now, of course, there's no before shots of the cafe because it didn't exist before. So here it is. And so that's basically the end of my commentary today. I will say thanks so much for watching. It's been a pleasure to bring this speed build to you today. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I'll say take care, and I will hopefully talk to you again soon.